All right, welcome everyone. Today is Wednesday, the 15th of November, 2023, and this is the Kubernetes API Server Network Proxy meeting. This is a subproject of Kubernetes SIG cloud provider and SIG API machinery, and as such, we follow the Kubernetes SIG's meeting guidelines. There's just Walter and I here today, so I won't enumerate them, but hey, Walter.
Sounds good. Do we want to bring up the agenda?
Yes. I would do that. Alrighty. So I see, Walter, you've added something here about issue 538. Oh, I think I might have lost Walter. Welcome back. You are muted.
Sorry, no, not quite sure what happened there. All right, so we had an outstanding bug from last time, the prow builds check being broken. So I've gone ahead and fixed that. There was one issue that was identified, which turned out to not be necessary to fix, which is a shortcut that I put into the make file for my own convenience. So the registry has to be set for the make to work. But in fact, it turns out for the pre-submit checks that even though the registry value needs to be set, the registry itself is never actually hit.
Okay.
In the pre-submit tests. There are other things where we do actually hit the registry. So one of the things I did is in the pre-submit tests themselves, I set, if we go here and we go ahead and just look in the files change, I went ahead and just set the registry to testlocal.io, which is just meant to be a placeholder value. We never actually hit it. I know one or two people have already commented on maybe we should have something that is more. I thought testlocal.io was pretty obviously a placeholder, but I'm happy to change it with something that's even more obviously a placeholder, if folks like. So that fixed the problem. What it didn't do is fix the side concern, which is that if you're not on GCP, the shortcut that I put in doesn't work for you.
Right. Right.
And so one of the things we discussed, excuse me, one of the things that we discussed in in one or two of the chat channels was whether or not it would make sense to either just remove it and force people to set this appropriately, or maybe leave it and let anyone who had an alternate help us come up with other ways of setting this. I mean, one possibility would be that we could have a variable like cloud, and if cloud is set and set to say Google, we do this. If it were set to Amazon or Azure, it could be set some other way, and we could appropriately set up the registry there. Or we can just remove it and just sort of require the registry be set and leave it to individuals to worry about.
Yeah. I mean, I think personally, like I'm fine with leaving the gcloud command in there, but I think we should wrap it with a little bit of bash foo so that if gcloud does not exist on the turn, in the shell that you're running this in, that it doesn't like blow up the whole thing. It just, picks a value and goes on. Because then we can leave the old behavior for people who are, used to that, but we don't break anything going forward. So like I'd be okay with doing something like that.
Okay. That sounds fair to me. Okay, so I think that's the primary one I had. I don't know. I mean, I am curious if you have any feedback from KubeCon. I know we presented API Server Network Proxy to KubeCon, so which I think is the third time. I'm amazed this little project has now been a KubeCon talk 3 times. It's kind of
Totally.
awesome. But yeah, I'd love to hear any feedback or insights from if you have any from KubeCon.
Yeah, I mean, sadly I wasn't there, but I did have some friends who attended the talk. And the words that I got back from my colleagues was that they thought it went pretty well. Maybe there was like 75 to 100 people in the room. So it seems like it was fairly well attended. And yeah, like I didn't hear any negative reactions back from it, but the recording hasn't been put up yet, so I haven't really watched it or anything. So I only got kind of thumbs up from people who I know who went.
Okay, sounds good. So one thing sorry, I don't want to fill too much space, but I think there are one or two things of interest. I know that St. All Clair has a pending PR where he's trying to improve the testing. So one of the observations that he made is that I think the test client, which I mean I built eons ago, which was really designed to make it easy to test edge cases, and so it does some very weird things to generate edge cases. While it may be good for generating edge cases, isn't really testing some of the what our actual client is supposed to do. And when and similar, and I think it also, yeah. So Tim has a PR out that I know I need to review that is designed to make the testing more accurately test the binaries that we're shipping. So people are welcome to review that. I have been busy, and I promised him I'd get to it next week. I know, he would love to get earlier reviews if at all possible. Yeah,
That's this one, right? I'm going to link it into the agenda.
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah, like I unfortunately don't have real time to dive into this at the moment, but hopefully, if anybody who's watching this recording later, we could use reviews.
Awesome. I'm also just going to put a pitch out for a few of the changes that I think would be good for us to see. So I have one out there. Right now, the code assumes, and I think we may have discussed this before, but the code assumes that we will be always going through a load balancer. And so it sort of assumes you just provide one IP address for the agents to talk to the API server or the network proxy, sorry, not the API server, network proxy server, and that it'll get load balanced appropriately. A couple of people have mentioned to me they have deployments models they'd like to use that can't rely on a load balancer. So I have a work in progress that I need to actually finish, where instead of just giving it a single IP address, you can give it multiple IP addresses, and it will go ahead and connect to all those IP addresses. And it basically, it refactors some of the code to package the connection from agent to network proxy code and some of the load balancer assumption into a central layer, so that layer can then be made swappable. So I have a work in progress. It's basically working, but I keep meaning to go back and finish some of the edge cases. So that's one I think that would be valuable. Another thing that I think would be really valuable is that we multiplex between the network proxy server and the network proxy agent. So there's essentially just one connection at the at the actual like layer 4 level between those two on the network, and then any traffic that needs to go to them is done on virtual connections that are just multiplexed on that central connection. That's how it works between the proxy server and the proxy agent. Between the proxy agent and the endpoint connection, the actual terminating connections, it's their actual connections. There's really nothing we can do about that. We don't have any code running in that endpoint. Whether it's a webhook server or a load kubelet or whatever the endpoint there happens to be. So that's fine. The interesting one is between the network proxy server and the Kube API server. The Kube API server connects to the network proxy server, and right now it creates an actual like network connection for every one of those. So if you have 1,000 connections between the network proxy server and the Kube API server, you're going to have 1,000 open connections like at the operating system level on those machines. That means you're going to have to do things like take that handshake hit every time. So there is the potential, and we did that because at the time HTTP Connect was the first form of that connection that we shipped with, and it doesn't really it can't really handle the sort of multiplexing that I'm talking about. And then when we added gRPC, which could handle it, we never really we just reused the HTTP Connect logic without actually spending any time to build the multiplexing in. Not everyone uses gRPC for that connection. I know, I think IBM right now, last I checked, was using HTTP Connect. But for those who are using gRPC, I think the multiplexing could make things a lot better. So I think there is a possibility of making a pretty dramatic improvement for that use case. Yeah. Performance gains, and also, I mean, it's many operating systems have limits on things like the number of file descriptors that they'll allow to remain open. And, don't ask me why, but we love to represent network connections as file descriptors. So,
hey, that's our Unix forefathers. Like, they gave us these guidelines, right?
yeah, exactly. I'm sure they had a reason, and I'm sure it made a lot of sense. I just don't know what that reason is. The other one that I think is of interest is we currently do not have a failure zone aware routing mechanism between the proxy server and the proxy agent. So we have something that is similar. We have something that says, hey, if I have an agent running on exactly the machine the traffic's going to, I can send it there. But there are reasons why you don't necessarily want to run one agent per kubelet. And if you're not running one agent per kubelet, which granted for our examples is the default with daemon sets, but if that's not the mode you're running in, then you don't actually get the behavior I'm talking about. And so it is potentially possible to have the agent indicate to the proxy server which failure domain it's running in. And this is where there'd be some interesting work to do. The proxy server, when it got a connection request, would need to look up which failure domain that connection request is in. And at that point, it's pretty easy to pick an agent in that failure domain. But that lookup could be a little interesting. We'd have to see how we wanted to do that. That would require a bit of investigation. But all of those seem like they would be interesting and useful improvements to network proxy.
So I have I guess a tough question here.
Yeah.
Have these been written up as issues yet?
Oh, they probably have actually.
Okay.
Finding them, I can always at some point soon go and try and find them.
Okay. Because I'm just my thought here is like I wonder if these are like if we could, you know, highlight more of the, you know, the upstream process to say like maybe put more attention on those or make sure the issues are up to date and everything, just so that we could have a hope of maybe finding people who might want to work on them or something.
Yeah, I like it. All right, cool. I am out of topics. I don't know if you had anything, Amico.
Nothing specific. I think Andrew and I have been talking a little bit. Well, actually, you know what? That's the other meeting. Sorry, I'm conflating meetings. Nope, no more topics for me here.
All right,
All right, cool.
cool.
I guess I'll see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you. Bye.